Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Coming up on the programme this week,
72% of people who take their life have had no contact with mental health services in the 12 months before they die, but they've probably had a haircut or a beauty treatment.
Whatever you say about your sense of feelings or whatever your experience is of this, you just saying and me sort of listening is an acknowledgement that these emotions may be actually uttered out loud for the first time.
I was a hairdresser, Tony and Guy, and women talking to me about things like menopauses and miscarriages, and I was totally unprepared for that. I was scared. I didn't know what to say or do, or do I say the wrong thing? Do I give advice? Do I not? That is a really important part of our skill, really important part of our industry.
And I'll be reminding you how you can make connections with mental health organisations within your community. It's Mental Health Monday. The home of the UK's conversation about mental health. It's Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. What a great guest we've got for you on the programme this week for episode 251. Thanks so much, by the way, for everybody's feedback from episode 250. Tony Schumacher, really great guest. Thanks to everybody at the Mental Health and Work Summit as well at the Arena and Convention Centre in Liverpool. The live show, thank you to the many, many people who were there as well in our live audience. It's sometimes nice to sort of mix things up in how we do things. Technically, it can bring its own difficulties, but actually being in a room with such goodwill, such a brilliant guest as well. And we've got another one for you this week. This one comes with details of a new book from the founder and CEO of the Lions Barber Collective. Tom Chapman is our guest. Now, Tom's a really well-known voice and face within the mental health world now because he made that connection between the work that he did as a barber, cutting people's hair, and talking to people about how they're feeling. Think about that conversation you have with your hairdresser or barber, actually using that as an opportunity in a social environment to talk about their feelings, but also to spot a sign that somebody might be struggling, that they might have difficulties, that they might need signposting to services. They're not medical professionals, these people within the health and beauty world, but they absolutely can support people, listen to people, and signpost them in the way of support. The book is called How to Listen So Men Will Talk. How to Listen So Men Will Talk. It's available in all good bookshops now. I imagine some bad ones too. And actually it focuses around that thing of it's not just about telling people to reach out, telling people to talk. It's about knowing what to say or what not to say when that conversation takes place. And that could be a conversation which is coming your way at any point. You know, you never know when a friend might turn to you and just say, I'm having a bad time of it. Those times will come in all of our lives. We need to know what to do when that happens. So it's a really fascinating conversation. Tom Chapman is his name. I started off by talking about the fact that as a barber, he isn't necessarily the first person you would expect to be an expert in the world of mental health, but those two worlds have well and truly collided.
Yeah, the Lions Barber Collective, if someone had told me 10 years ago I'd be working in mental health more than barbering, I would never have believed them. But, I think it was always aligned. I think hairdressers and barbers do listen to people day in, day out. We are part of people's lives and we hear all those stories. So yeah, it's been joked about forever that we're therapists and counsellors, and I think to a certain extent we are, although that's not what we're trying to do with the Lions Barber Collective. We're not trying to turn people into therapists or psychiatrists. It's just about preparing them as well for these conversations that they're having behind the chair, preparing the hair and beauty professionals to feel comfortable and confident to ask good questions, listen well, and have the knowledge of where to signpost those in their chairs too. We do lots of different things, from the education to pop-up barbershops. And I've just returned from London late last night, where we were delivering a pop-up barbershop on a construction site here in central London in Finsbury Square. So suicide is obviously a big issue, with 75% of them being men and it being the biggest killer in young people. But construction has the highest rate of any industry. And I think it was fantastic yesterday being on site in their environment and seeing them sitting in the chair and using that vehicle, the haircut, to open up these fantastic conversations around well-being and suicide prevention and what's available and what kind of things that some of them already do, which I can't imagine them having those conversations on the scaffolding or whilst doing the bricklaying. I think it's just great to how safe the environment of a haircut can be.
Absolutely. There must have been people who, Tom, sort of, back when you were starting out, were saying, well, what do you know? You're only barbers. Like you're not trained. You're not psychiatrists. Psychiatrists. What if you give wrong advice, or you do something wrong and it makes somebody's situation? Well, you must have had all sorts of people telling you to sort of keep your nose out of other people's business.
Yeah, look, I mean, to be honest with you, I think we've had mostly support. I can remember it being questioned once by Dr. Hillary on television one day when I was watching it. I saw him, should barbers and hairdressers be doing this sort of thing? But, we're not trying to, prescribe or diagnose. And I think it's the reason why it works, because it's a non-clinical, non-judgmental environment. Men especially, I mean, most people don't know who their doctor is anymore. There's not a family doctor. There isn't that relationship anymore. But they do have a relationship with their barber and hairdresser. And it's about preparing the barbers and hairdressers to direct them to doctors and say, yeah, it's okay to go and talk to a doctor. It's okay to go and seek medical help. It's okay to go to a talking group or medication, and we're trying to normalize and soften the attitude around mental health. And I think when we're trying to bridge the gap between the communities we serve and resources that are available. The infrastructure the hair and beauty industry has is incredible. It's on every high street, from tiny villages to giant towns and cities, and it's accessible, affordable, and easy to go to for most people. And 72% of people who take their life have had no contact with mental health services in the 12 months before they die, but they've probably had a haircut or a beauty treatment. And if we can catch them in that moment and say, look, it's okay to go and see a doctor. It's okay to talk about these things. Or even in a more desperate situation, they might be in a moment of crisis, and we can ask them if they're suicidal and know how to get them in an ambulance or to a crisis team. I think the impact that the hair and beauty industry has is phenomenal anyway.
Absolutely. And I'm a huge advocate, and people who listen to the podcast will know, of mental health in everything. And by that I mean that it isn't just something which you wait to speak to somebody in a medical world, that actually every aspect of life can have people's mental health and well-being as a part of it, in terms of their interaction with it or how proactive they want to be with it. And I think it's one of those things where, what a great opportunity, because those people are sitting in that chair for a set period of time, that you've decided to take that on and think, actually, this isn't just something that we might do for a bit because it's Mental Health Awareness Week, or we might just do this and see how. It's a commitment now, and you're expanding that commitment and bringing other people into the story too.
Yeah, I think we do it anyway as an industry. We are doing these things. I think I can remember being young, being on the shop floor, knowing how to cut hair, but having people come and tell me, women, I was a hairdresser, Tony and Guy, and women talking to me about things like menopauses and miscarriages, and I was totally unprepared for that. I was scared. I didn't know what to say or do, or do I say the wrong thing? Do I give advice? Do I not? And I think that is really important part of our skill, really important part of our industry. And I feel that the next generation especially should have this prep for these conversations to keep them safe as well, because it's just as important of looking after our clients, but looking after the barbers and the hairdressers as well, so they're prepared, they've got resilience, and hopefully they know where to go and look. They know how to look after their own mental health and how to offload, and that it is okay to offload. I think if you're a therapist or a counsellor, you have to have a therapist or a counsellor. If you're a Samaritan, you have to offload before you finish work. But if you're a hairdresser, you cut 10, 12 people's hair every day, you get home and your other half asks you how your day was, and you shut them down and go, I've done too much talking today. I just want to sit and watch whatever. And we just build up and build up. So I think there's definitely improvement to do with that side of things. And it's something that I'd love to be able to have a industry specific helpline like a Samaritans, but for the industry, by the hair industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a huge thing, isn't it, about making sure that those responders are sort of taking care of themselves, because you must hear all sorts of different things. I was going to ask you about that, actually. I mean, when people sit down in front of you, do they go, right, here we go, we're going to talk about my mental health? Or is it much more relaxed than that? Like, there's this thing in a mental health with capital M and a capital H, or is it more this sort of more general well-being, and actually people then leave thinking, actually, I was talking about my feelings, and I was talking about how I was, thinking about a certain situation or something I was dwelling on? Or do you have it go, right, sit down now, time to talk mental health?
Yeah, I think it's the two ends of the spectrum. I think also with mental health, for a long time we've seen it as something that other people have. It is a diagnosable, problem of bipolar or depression or anxiety. But actually, like our physical health, it's a scale of things. Physical health is not just heart attacks and cancer, and it's also, I've got a bit of a sore throat, or I've got a headache, and I know how to medicate and or make myself feel better by drinking more fluids or whatever it may be. And I think mental health is exactly the same as that. You have low moods, you have down days, you have stress, you suffer loss, whether it be of a job, of a parent, of a pet, or whatever it may be. And that is our mental health working. And I think sometimes you get people that come and sit in the chair and they will say things like, especially at these events, like we did yesterday, a pop-up event, they'll sit down and say, oh, I've never had any problems with my mental health. I'm quite a strong person. And then by the end of the haircut, they've told you about their 3 divorces and their cats died and this and that. And they wouldn't consider that mental health. They would consider mental health as something far more like a crisis level, being locked up in an asylum or something. And I think that's the image we need to change. It's not about mental health condition, it's about the human condition. And we all go through that. And people come and sit in a chair and tell us about their lives. And that is our mental well-being. So, I don't think everyone's going to come and sit in our chair and we're going to ask them if they're suicidal. There may be a moment when we have to do that and be prepared for it. But I think we just need to realize that actually we all have mental health. We all have situational things that will create issues in our lives and make us struggle from time to time. It's just the way of life, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well that the difference between the physical and mental health is very much that you mentioned at the start around 72% of people hadn't had any interaction with medical sort of services prior to a suicide. And yet from a physical health point of view, it's not necessarily something you would raise with various different people. But from a mental health point of view, it is a conversation you can have with your barber, your hairdresser, or with somebody in various different things. I think of how are you feeling is a universal question that we ask of everybody. And yet what you seem to have done is if you focus that you actually listen to the response, and then proactively engage in that response. Because how are you is this, we ask it a million times a day, how are you getting on? Those sorts of questions. You guys have taken it and run with it and go, well, and how are you? And I genuinely mean that. And I'm here to listen to your response. And to me, that's such a huge thing, because you've taken something which is very, very simple, and yet you've actually given it the credit and the time that a response deserves, if you like.
Yeah, I think that's why I developed the training, Barber Talk, originally Barber Talk, because I went and I lost my friend to suicide, and I was hugely invested, something needed to change, and I went and did mental health first aid, suicide assist, I did safe talk, I did everything I could get my hands on. And the more I saw it, the more I thought, hang on, this is something that barbers and hairdressers could do with as a skill set. And the more I talked to my clients, they said, well, you don't know this, but you helped me through my divorce 5 years ago. You helped me through this because you listened well and you did. And then I tried to get barbers and hairdressers to come and do these big courses, and it was too much. It was too heavy. That was the feedback. And actually that's where I sort of broke it down and worked alongside Dr. Peter Aitkins and another lady called Jerry Callaghan from Public Health to break it down into something that's simple and usable and accessible that we can do. And it's literally as simple as recognizing the signs that something's happened. So changes in people's behavior, essentially. If someone comes in, has a haircut, and they've gained a lot of weight or lost a lot of weight, or they're sleeping too much or not enough, or they've started going out and drinking more, or they've stopped going out and they've become a bit more recluse, that's a sign that something's happened. And those changes in behavior are an opportunity for us to ask good questions. And like you said, how are you feeling? How are you feeling today? How are you really feeling? And giving them permission to talk, because you're right, mate. It's not permission to talk, it's a greeting. And I think we need to go one step beyond and think about using questions that would make us feel comfortable to talk. And then it's a case of really listening and not trying to fix or solve the situation, not trying to tell people I know how you feel, or I understand, or this is what I did when I went through it. Make it about them, listen to them, keep on asking them why they feel that way, how do they feel that way, how long have they felt that way, what do they think they could do to solve some of these issues, and then hand the ball over to them, really listen. And then finally, it's about having knowledge of what's available, whether it be community resources, charities, medical, professional, and be able to be that stepping stone to get them to that support. Sometimes it is just a case of listening, but I honestly believe that we could all do this within any situation with our clients, our colleagues, our friends, and maybe it's a little bit. It's about time maybe we do start taking a bit of responsibility and for those around us, the ones we love and the ones we know.
Yeah, absolutely. I often, when people talk to me about sort of what people should say to people, because they're aware that I have a lot of conversations around mental health, I always use the Hub of Hope is a really fantastic resource where people could go to, and people straight away are like, "What?" So it's just a list of all the places that I can turn to. It's like, yeah, they literally they go on there, find them. They want you to call. That's why they've signed up to that service. Like that's what that, and straight they go, "All right, I didn't even realize that something like that even existed." But that little bit of knowledge within an area suddenly opens doors to people that they didn't think were even existed. Brings us on quite nicely, by the way, Tom, to the fact you've got a new book out, How to Listen So Men Will Talk. I really like this idea. I've had this conversation many times. I was talking about it actually in episode 250 of the podcast, when we were talking about this idea that men, we always say like men in particular, they're hard to reach members of a community. And I always say there's either hard to reach or can't be bothered to reach. Like use a bit of imagination to find connections with these people, because often they will talk, but you've got to know what that skill set is, the how to listen so men will talk. You talk there about, creating that sort of safe environment and sitting down and having that conversation, even if it's not flagged up as a now let's talk about our mental health conversation. But that's so crucial, isn't it? That when people do talk, that the response is the right response too.
Yeah, I like we just said, I think everyone has a responsibility to look out for those around us, because normally it happens when it's too late, and people will say, I never realized anything was going on. I didn't recognize they were going for anything. And I've had people do the training with us before and say at the beginning of the course exactly that, but by the end of the course they would say, I did recognize there was something going wrong. They were spending more time in their room, but I just dismissed it as something else. I didn't want to ask a question because I was scared of what they would say. And I think that's the biggest thing. You mentioned response there. We're telling everybody to talk now, aren't we? All the time. It's everywhere, and I know I'm engulfed in mental health, so I see it probably more than most, but we're encouraging people to talk. But what happens if that person builds up that courage to talk to you and you shut them down because you're scared of you're scared you don't know how to respond? Everything will be fine, or you need to man up, or get on with it, let's go for a pint, or whatever it may be, just dismiss it. That might be that only chance that person was going to open up. And we do need to be prepared for the response. And even if it's just a thank you for opening up to me, I feel honored that you feel comfortable enough to tell me how you feel. I don't really know what to say right now, but I'm here if you want to talk to me. And most of the time, people don't want you to say anything. They want to be able to talk to you. They feel comfortable. They want you to be with them. And I think the power of that is so incredible, the response. And I've publicly told people for the last sort of 7 years or so that it's okay to talk to me. If I go out of an evening, sometimes people recognize me as the guy who does mental health. And then as soon as I say, yeah, that's right, that's me, they go on and offload stuff to me. And there's people I've never met before in my life. They may be in a bar or a restaurant or on the street, and they just open up and tell me stuff. And that's because I've just publicly told everybody for the last so many years it's okay to talk to me. And it's as simple as that. They know they're not going to get a bad or negative response, so therefore they feel comfortable.
And I know it's disruptive slightly on a night out, but what a privilege, sometimes, and I have this too, where some people will like name their medication, how many tablets they take, what days they take. Like they'll give me the full, absolute rundown. And I'm not necessarily taking notes, but I'm just thinking this person wants to tell me this thing, which probably in another environment would feel either massively wrong or taboo or potentially problematic. Whereas actually, this is this thing about mental health in everything, where you suddenly have that conversation with someone, and actually it's just someone talking to you and you're listening to it and you're either agreeing with them or empathizing with them or sympathizing with them. And it's a normal thing. And suddenly this world, which feels alien or wrong or that they don't feel part of, they suddenly think, oh, actually, I spoke to that person about it and he understood it or she got it. And I probably feel now I can probably have that sort of conversation with someone who knows what they're talking about. I think that's absolutely, that for me is one of the privileges of it, that all that taboo and stigma, when you're into that conversation, it just doesn't exist because it's just two people connecting about their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And that's at the very core of what we are as human beings, our sense.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly all of that. I agree 100%. It's a huge honor that somebody can walk up to a 6'3", hugely tattooed, 20 stone plus man and talk to him in about mental health in the middle of a pub in a public space, and not be worried about that. And it's as simple as just saying, yeah, it's okay to talk to me, and we can all do that, right?
Absolutely.
We can all step back and go, look, I'm not going to judge, and not being judged as well. I think that's a fear, isn't it? It's a fear of being judged by the other person, or being looked down upon, or seen to be weak. I think men are, traditionally feel that way. They think that mental health is a weakness. And we even had the conversations with some of the builders, and we've had conversations with all over the place. We've done pop-ups with farmers, builders, fishermen, college students, university students, all that, and there is that fear of being perceived weakness from mental health.
Can I ask you this question? There's been a lot of talk in recent years around the sort of mistakes that people make, such as the man up, pull yourself together. You've got a wife and kids. What are you worried about? What have you got to be depressed about? Those the wrong things to sort of say. But are there other mistakes that people might make, even if they want to say or do the right thing, that we should try and avoid?
Yeah, I think people try and relate back to their own situation. So someone may have lost a parent or lost a partner, or breakdown of a relationship, and they'll say, oh, well, when I went through this happened, and I did this, and they take over the story completely. They're not even listening to that individual anymore. They're trying to fix the problem by relating back to something that is their own experience. And actually, we all know what you will never know how someone feels truly, because we have our own experience, we have our own upbringing, our own moral stone. We have all, it's all our own internal journey. And actually, lockdown or the pandemic is quite a good example of that, because we both went through exactly the same experience, but we had our own personal experiences to it. Some people enjoyed it, some people hated it, some people were locked up by themselves in a little flat, and other people, we had their families and that around them. So you could never say, oh, I know what lockdown was like for you, because I did this. So it's the same, just because, you both lost your pet hamster. Someone might have hated their pet hamster and it was a nightmare for them, and the other person might have loved it. So you can't be telling people, I understand, I know how you feel. Instead of that, try and say things that I don't know how you feel, but I'm here for you if you want to tell me, and I'll try to understand. And it's a lot easier to relive our past experience and listen to someone's fresh pain, isn't it?
That's a good one, because it reminds me of a conversation we had about sympathy versus empathy. That sympathy is a bit, like sympathy is not, like, empathy is a lot more, you place yourself in their position. But actually, you've got what you've spoken about there is actually empathy plus, which is not just going, oh, I've been there and this is what I did. It's actually going, I've been there, and I know that, having been there myself, the thing that you need to do is talk, and I'm going to listen, which is
it's difficult, right?
Yeah. That because our human thing is to kind of go, yes, how do I relate to this person? What's my connection? And therefore, I'll then sort of explore that connection with them. Whereas actually, to give this idea of empathy plus time, empathy plus time is that thing of going, I empathize with this person because I know what I've been in a similar situation, and I know that what they need is to talk and explore even their own emotion.
Well, I mean, even if you could say, look, say that person's going through a divorce, you went through a divorce, you could say, I've been through a divorce, it was awful. How has it been for you? And give it back to them, and give them the back and go, yeah, I can relate to it because I've been through it and I felt really bad, but I'm not going to go on and tell you how bad I felt and he did this and they did that, and but I'm going to go through and say, yeah, it felt awful, but please tell me about how you felt and what's going on with you, and just keep on. It's all the open-ended questions, just throwing it back to them. It sounds like you're struggling with that. Tell me more. I always relate it when I'm doing the training with the barbers and hairdressers. I to try and make it relatable to them. I say I have a client that comes and sits in my chair and they've got a great tan. They've been on holiday. You ask them, oh, so you've been away, where have you been? And they respond back to me saying, I've just got back from Brazil, for example. And I say, well, oh my God, instantly my brain goes racing, I love Brazil. Brazil is my favorite country I've been to. I could instantly go to them. Wow, I love Brazil. When I went to Brazil, I went here, I did this, I ate this, I drank here, we went to this show. Blah, blah. They don't care. They want to tell me about their Brazil. It's about saying to them, wow, I love Brazil. It's a fantastic country. I've been there a few times. Please tell me, what was your favorite thing? What was your experience? Where did you go? What did you like? And then afterwards, they may start asking you questions, say, what do you think I should do? And I think there was someone said to me recently, actually, it was quite interesting. They like to say to their friends, do you want me to just listen, or would you like my opinion on that? And I think that's quite a powerful thing, because you're giving them an option there. If they want, some people might want to feed for some information or advice in inverted commas from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had a friend of mine. She used to say this thing as a joke. She used to say, "But enough about me. What about you? What do you think about me?" Like, that was always her way of going. Like, yes, this conversation is very me heavy and me focused. And it's really, really crucial. And actually, that it's almost the acknowledgement, isn't there, that basically whatever you say about your sense of feelings or whatever your experience is of this, you just saying and me sort of listening is an acknowledgement that these emotions maybe actually uttered out loud for the first time are acknowledged, which doesn't necessarily put them up on a shelf and go, right, everybody take a look at these emotions now. But there's almost like a compartmentalization, isn't there, that people do about their emotions. And actually that bit felt terrible. Actually, we did that. That wasn't the bit I was worried about. It was X, Y, or Z. And actually that acknowledgement that you can explore each of those emotions in a long list if you want to, and you'll listen without the interruption.
I think there's been a few occasions where people have wanted to speak to me. They come down and met me. We've gone for a walk, or we sat in the office or whatever, and they've told me about something that's going on. For example, they're struggling with some sort of mental health condition. They're waiting to be seen. They wanted to go and when they have their moments, they want to get out of the house, but their partner doesn't want them to leave because they're scared of them leaving the house in case they hurt themselves. And then they go on to create the solution themselves. They tell me the solution because they break it down. They're getting out of their head and they go, well, I could do this. And instead of going there, I could, my friend's got this place and I could go to his place because then my other half would know where I was. And then at the end of it, you say to them, so when are you going to go and tell your mate you want to go and use his space to do this? And they go, that's a really good idea, Tom. I never thought of that. I'm like, you just told me. I didn't know. I didn't know about any of these things. You just told me them. But it's amazing how things build up in your head and they get worse and worse. And it's just erratic in there, isn't it? Sometimes the thought pattern. And then once you start verbalizing it and getting it out of your head, it's amazing how that path becomes clearer. Because I'd be honest with you, we know what's good for us, really. We know how to solve the problems we're having. And actually, by having someone there to just listen and reassure us it's okay what we're saying and it's okay and safe, then I think we can do a lot to help ourselves.
Can I actually just to wrap up, obviously the book's out now. We'll make that point available in all good bookshops. How to Listen So Men Will Talk by Tom Chapman. The other element that we've not touched on yet is also the fact you're giving them a haircut. And I just wonder whether or not that, a haircut it can be a huge thing, but it's a relatively minor physical tweak in that it'll grow back and it'll go, and a month later you might need to go and get it sort of changed again or adjusted or sort of sharpened up a little bit. But I just wonder whether or not that's part of the journey that someone might have with a Tom Chapman or someone like you, that it's not just about the offloading, but they also have this slight physical tweak that makes them just look a little bit different, feel a little bit different. They notice that their head feels a little bit lighter or whatever it is, that they leave as a slightly different person. And I don't know if a psychologist has ever sort of gone through what that is or how that is, but I wondered how much of a factor you think that is in terms of your success.
Yeah, I think haircut is a very powerful thing. I think there's license to touch, intimacy, trust of sharp implements, around people's faces, and your trust has to make you look good. But also there's a level of sort of disconnection there because there's not like confrontational eye-to-eye conversation that may be difficult. It's through a mirror. It's it's weird because we're so close and intimate. There's not many people that run their fingers through your hair or beard. But your hair professional is one of them, and that is a very intimate space. But again, it's slightly distant because you're not sitting down as you would with a doctor or a therapist, and they're looking at you face to face. So I think there's something there. Human touch releases oxytocin, which is obviously a feel-good hormone. So that's another thing. But People are better at talking whilst doing. So walking, has anyone ever been in a car driving along and you have these conversations? You have these amazing conversations where you bear all on a road trip with people. And I don't know what it is. You just whilst you're doing something else, and the focus isn't on the conversation seems to flow freely.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tom, congratulations on the latest book, How to Listen So Men Will Talk. It's available now in all good bookshops. And great to hear you're doing so much work with both the Lions Barber Collective, but also moving out into other industries and sort of taking on those wider conversations as well. Because I think people do absolutely look to you and the work that you and the team do to really get this conversation into sort of normal workplaces, normal environments, and places where people feel safe and comfortable having these conversations. So a huge credit to you, and thank you for joining us on Mental Health Monday.
Thank you so much for having me, Mick.
I hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast. Thanks for checking out Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Mick Coyle. You can also find me, Mick Coyle, on Facebook as well. Don't forget, if you want to speak to somebody about your mental health, you can do so. The Samaritans, free to call on 116 123. You can find mental health services where you are. Just look for the Hub of Hope. Type in your postcode. It'll find those mental health services close to you. And for support in a crisis, you can text SHOUT to 85258. That's if you're experiencing a personal crisis, you're unable to cope and need support. Shout to 85258. That's a text line. Do get involved in those services. In an absolute emergency, always remember the number to call is 999. Thanks for downloading the podcast this week. We'll be back next week with more Mental Health Monday.